Okay, so welcome, Sue and Sally and Iona.
Thank
Really
you.
nice to have you here. Um, so I thought, yeah, anyone got us anything else to share? We've kind of done our initial check-in. Yeah. Anything else to share or comment on?
Just about oneness, I've noticed recently that I can feel the oneness. And
Mm,
like, I was just stroking the dog, and I can feel that I'm stroking me. and,
really?
I'm touching a bush, and oh, I'm touching me. It's weird. It's strange.
Yeah,
Lovely.
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah. So you just kind of feel the connection. And again, it's not something you can really explain. It's just can you say it's just a feeling? It's like, yeah, a knowing, a feeling. Um, and this is why enlightenment is experiential. The mystics, it's all the only qualification to be a mystic is that you must have your own experience. It's not book knowledge. It's not, oh, someone else had an experience, I'm talking about that. It's like, no, this is my own personal experience that gives you the experiential understanding, because that's what it's about. You don't, just the difference between a theologian and a I've had the experience of oneness, and you can't really teach that, really. That all he's doing here, Yeshua's doing, is he's saying, I can't teach you love. He says in the introduction, you know, I cannot teach you the meaning of love because that's beyond what can be taught, but I can teach you to remove the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. And so that's what the focus is. Okay, so let's teach you how to observe the blocks, to understand what's going on, and then to let them go, because then love's presence will naturally reveal itself. And so it's not, you're not trying to become anything, you're trying to unbecome the false self. It's the undoing. That's the focus of this. Whereas if you say go more into the sort of personal growth idea, what they're trying to say is build a better self. You have a dysfunctional, weak, limited self at the moment. If you do these various whatever techniques, processes, achievements, then you'll become a better self. So you kind of create a better self. But that self is still based on the idea that you are dysfunctional, that you are unworthy, which is why it never really works, because it's based on the idea that I'm not okay as I am. So therefore, the ego says, well, I'll give you a better self then. But a better false self is not going to work. If it's still false, it's ultimately just the same as the other self. So before you thought you were a victim, then you transition, and maybe you become someone who's really grandiose, arrogant, egoic, and it's all about your achievements and possessions, and that's just another false self. It's not really helping you at all. The world will say, well, that's better. Some people might say that's better because you seem to have more power, more status in the world. But it's just the ego in another guise. So grandiosity. There's a great lesson on littleness and grandiosity in the text, which we did a month or two ago. He talks about grandiosity being the flip side of littleness. So whether you believe in littleness, so Sue was talking about her experience with littleness, or you like the grandiose Donald Trump type, larger than life, I'm the great I am, it's actually the same thing, because the self that it's based on is the false self. It's actually unworthy and non-existent. And the grandiosity is just a cover for the littleness. So underneath every Donald Trump is someone who feels deeply unworthy and is trying to cover it over with all the grandiose, and that's typically, it's always got a big ego. But actually the victim has got just as big an ego, just doesn't play out in the same way. It's the identification with a little self that is not the expanded oneself, that is the truth in you. And so this is why we practice, to just undo all of this. It's an undoing rather than, you don't have to become who you are. You are already that. That's really the difference between a spiritual teaching and a teaching based on the ego. You are already what you are. You cannot make yourself that. You were created that way. You simply have to remember it. It's already there. Much, much easier than going, oh, well, actually, I've got to now construct, I've got to create myself. And, all of the work that goes into that. But if you're eternally created, then how's that possible? You can't make yourself. You can't create yourself. You are as God created you, which is really the key message of this whole teaching. You are as God, love, this eternal presence, pure formless awareness, whatever you want to call it, as it created you. And that is your reality. And you cannot change that. It's impossible to change it. Our whole delusion is that we think we've changed it. This is the entire problem of the world. We think we've changed what is eternally unchanging, what is eternal reality. We think we have the power to change this and make ourselves into something else. And that's the whole delusion of the ego. And that's what we're trying to undo and overcome with this work. Because you are not human. If you are an eternal self, how can you be human? That's the question. How can you be? Because human beings are clearly not eternal. We live, we die, there's a timeline, birth, death, suffering, sickness. This is all part of the human condition. So if that's true, then the eternal self cannot be true. You see, there's a fundamental contradiction. You can't be immortal and mortal at the same time. It's one or the other. And this is all Yeshua is saying, look, you think you've done all of this. And so it seems to have reality for you because your thought has enormous power. But you are mistaken, right? It's simply none of it's true. You are not human. You are an eternal self. And it doesn't matter what you've done, what you think you've done. You still are that self. Now, for the ego doesn't want to hear that, but your spirit self, your true self goes, oh, that's such a nice message to hear, isn't it? Oh, thank goodness. Okay, it's, whatever I thought I'd done was never really done. It actually doesn't matter at all. I am still the unchanging self that I always was. And all I have to do is recognize that. Accept it. That's it. That's the whole, it's so simple, really. But the difficulty we experience is that the ego has got such a hold over our minds that it doesn't let go easily. It doesn't just go, oh, well, it's so simple. Then of course I'm just going to give up the game and stop trying to run your mind. And it's not going to do that, is it? It's got a power, and it's going to try and hold on to it and lock you into that. And then you have these ego attacks because it's the ego reacting and fighting back. But as I said to both Sue and Iona, that's good. You get an ego attack, it shows itself to you. And that's really, really helpful. Because then you go, wow, okay, that's just really not nice at all. That's very unpleasant. And this is actually what's lurking in my subconscious. This is what the ego is. No. Okay, so I choose to let it go. And then you've just released it. So the more it reveals itself, the more you push it by doing the spiritual work, the more it reveals itself, the more opportunity you have for undoing it. And that's the way the Holy Spirit reinterprets the ego. And ultimately, ego's got no answer to that. So it keeps coming and trying to, do its thing. And then the Holy Spirit just says, okay, we'll just let it go. And the ego's got no answer ultimately to letting go. It must go if you keep letting it go. So this is the teaching, saying just keep letting it go, using these lessons that he's giving us to help us, and the ego must go. It's a done deal. It's inevitable because it's not ultimately true. So in the end, the truth will assert itself in your mind, and you will be free. And I know that, says Yeshua, because I've done it. So I absolutely know that, like what I've done, you can do too. It's possible for every human being to do this. And he's just our way show. He's the example. The way show is like, yeah, okay, he's done it. So yes, I can do it too, which is very encouraging. which is why we, for me, this course makes so much sense, because you're studying it, you're learning from a master who has done it, not someone who's still trying to do it, still trying to escape from their ego and escape from the matrix, still in human form. He's done it. He got out of the matrix, basically. So what better guide to show you out of the matrix than someone who's done it? Because he knows the way. So that's why we study his teachings. Well, why I do, because it's like, okay, I want to learn from someone who's got the credentials, who's been there, he's done it, he knows the way, he's got out. So if you're in a maze, you don't know the way out, you're going to want to have a guide who knows the way out, who's got out himself, and he knows the maze intimately. Well, that's effectively what we're doing with the course. He's meeting us in the middle of the maze. He's going, okay, I know the way out. I'll show you. Take my hand, and I'll lead you through all the twists and the turns of the egoic thought system, and I'll lead you out of the maze. And just follow my guidance, because I know the way. And you don't actually have to you don't have to find the way yourself. Just listen to my guidance. I'll tell you, take a left, take a right, do this, do that. If you just listen, and the guidance is always there, which is very comforting. Okay, anything else any other questions or anything else to share? No?
No, happy to crack on with the lesson.
All right, so let's have a look at our quote for today, and we'll go into the lesson. So, why it's not paging up? There we go. Yeah, so this is I love this quote in the song. Did you listen to the song?
I know it very well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a feel good. And did you watch the music video?
No, not yet.
No, you got to watch it. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I will watch it again.
It's really a good laugh. It's very uplifting. It's got Robin Williams in it. And these guys are just
yes, yeah.
They're having so much fun. They must have had an absolute laugh making that video. You can just see. So there's like this energy of like, don't worry, be happy, just kind of carefree. So it's got a lovely energy. And, in essence, that's a simple formula. Simple formula is don't worry. Because when you worry, you take yourself out of the present moment, you put yourself on the timeline, you make the past real as well, because you're worrying based on your past experiences, projecting that into the future, and you cover over the present moment, which is the only time that you can access this eternal state that we call reality or heaven. And then how can you be happy? Happiness only comes in the now. So that's why in the Eastern teachings, in the Vedanta, they talk about the first symptom of enlightenment is to be worry-free. You're not worried anymore, because there's nothing to worry about. You're just rooted in the present moment, and in the present moment you access this eternal presence of who you are, and you just deal with things moment by moment instead of projecting yourself into the future, which is how the ego works. So don't worry, be happy. Kind of, we could just summarize the entire Course in Miracles. It's like four words: don't worry, be happy. Or there's another nice one: no self, no problem. That's a Buddhist monk said that. No self, no problem. Don't worry, be happy. But we study because there's a complexity in the ego that needs to be undone. Well, why do we worry? Well, we worry because we're invested in our separate self, and the separate self feels threatened, and so there's a whole identity, an ego identity behind worry. It gets perpetuated through the worry, which is why we do it. You got to recognize that this is the game. You're not actually worrying for any other reason than to reinforce your ego, because worry does nothing. It's not helping you to solve any problems. It just keeps you away from the present moment and away from the happiness that is waiting for you there, and roots you on the timeline. On that timeline of consciousness, Let's have a look at this quickly. So on this timeline, you get stuck into past and future, and all of these events seem to be very real. And the ego is always saying, well, there's some kind of salvation in the future, but there's also a lot to worry about in the future, because the future is very uncertain. And so worry identifies you with the character in the dream, with the timeline, with the events on the timeline, and then you're stuck on the timeline. And the God, love, eternity, pure formless awareness, knowledge is obscured, and you're simply not aware of it. You just think you're a little self going from birth to death on the timeline. So that's what worry does. So you need to be very vigilant. It's like if I'm worrying a little bit, I've got a little bit of a frustration or a grievance. You need to take note and let it go, because that puts you on the timeline. So very simple. You have one thought like that. Well, now you're attached to the timeline and the character in the dream, and the timeline puts you into death. Remember, the ego is a death wish. If you identify yourself as the character on the timeline, then you have a death wish, because in the end you're going to die. So that's why every thought, we must be vigilant of what's actually going on in our minds. And if we notice worry or anything coming in, then we reinterpret it. So the methodology is you give it to you let go. You go into this knowledge, pure formless awareness, through a letting go process, and then you return. Now you're still apparently the character on the timeline, and the situation's still in your perception, but your perception of the situation changes because you've done that letting go. So now this Holy Spirit, Yeshua calls it, which is just a remembrance of oneness, reinterprets every situation for you if you've let it go and you see it differently. And then you go, oh, okay, actually now I can see it differently, got a different perspective, and I can take a different action. Because as soon as your perspective, your perception of something shifts, then a new possibility unfolds, doesn't it? You can act differently. Before you're like, well, why didn't I think of that before? Well, because the ego won't let you see that possibility. With its limited perception, your range of options is very limited as to what you can do. So it's all about shift perception and then come back and reinterpret that situation and see it differently. And that's the miracle that he's talking about. It's what he's training us to do, is to look at an event on the timeline, to let it go, so we go into this state of mind, even if it's just briefly, and then we return and we look at this differently, and our perception of it has shifted because we've gone into this higher awareness. And now that changed perception gives us the guidance that we need to move forward on the timeline in a miraculous way, in a much more helpful way than the ego, which simply wants to keep you rooted on the timeline, and it wants to keep really drama going. It likes the drama. So pain, suffering, anything that's going to cause drama, it feeds off. So then you have a pretty unhappy existence, because that's what the ego wants you to have. And there's the surrogate parent thing. Okay. Well, I was obviously inspired when I wrote that. I'm not quite sure why I did, but it just kind of came to me. It's like, well, I suppose because I'd had a major childhood trauma, death of a parent, and then, okay, well, then what are you going to do? You're going to try and replace your parent, surrogate parent, which is what, even if you haven't, lost a parent, this is a common pattern, as you said, Sally. Okay, so any questions on that diagram? It's pretty straightforward, but worth reminding yourself of frequently. So we talked about worry, this timeline, yeah. So maybe Sally, just read this. This is from a couple of days ago, from the text reading called "The Function of Time." Just a short quote from that.
Now is the closest approximation of eternity that this world offers. It is the reality of now, without past or future, that the beginning of the appreciation of eternity lies. But only now is here, and only now presents the opportunities for the holy encounters in which salvation can be found.
Oh, so pretty clear. I mean, he's talking directly about this now. That could be a quote from The Power of Now. Although Eckhart doesn't use holy very much, but it's the same, and every spiritual teaching is really saying the same thing, aren't they? They're all saying the now is where it's at. I think what I like about the Course is he explains it. Well, the reason why is because the appreciation of eternity lies in it. So this is the closest approximation to eternity, this other reality, timeless, eternal state of mind. This is the closest thing closest we can come to it, is when we're fully present. So that's why it feels good to be in the now. We feel happy and connected because we are actually in that connected to that eternal state of mind. As soon as we're on the timeline, it feels very disconnected because now this eternal state is denied. Time and eternity contradict each other because the ego and the Holy Spirit contradict each other. Okay, so I think we read this yesterday. So really this is just talking about not worrying, being in the moment, allowing joy to arise spontaneously, moment by moment, because it can only rise if you think back to when you've been joyful in your life. Joy is never planned. You can't plan joy. It just happens spontaneously when you're fully in the moment. And so Yeshua's asking us to live this way, to let go of worry, bring ourselves into the present moment, and allow this joy to come through. And because joy is your natural state, you don't really have to try to do this. This isn't about stressing and straining and striving. You just let go, and the joy will be there if you fully let go. That's the beauty of this teaching. Well, your only job is to let go of what's blocking your awareness of love and peace and joy. Okay, so any questions or thoughts on that? I'm not going to go through all of this because there's quite a bit. You can read it yourself. And that was a good session, if I recall. So it's worth listening to that or watching that if you'd like to. So that brings us to our lesson for today, which I haven't translated because I ran out of time. So I'm going to ask you to read the original, and then we'll do a kind of translation as we go. So there it is, an original. It's actually quite a short one, so let me just paste this into a document and get going. So, any thoughts on the lesson overall? Or not really? Sorry, who said something?
I haven't read it yet.
Okay, so let's dive into it, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's read the original, and then we'll come in with the translation. So do you want to kick it off, Iona, with the original? God's will for me is perfect happiness, and the first paragraph.
God's will for me is perfect happiness. Today we will continue with the theme of happiness. This is a key idea in understanding what salvation means. You still believe it asks for suffering as penance for your sins. This is not so. Yet you must think it so while you believe that sin is real and that God's Son can sin.
Okay. So alternatively, let's just paste out another one in here. Alternatively, I'm going to do the translation.
Pure formless awareness of perfect love, or perfect love's.
Yeah, I think that's simpler.
Yep.
Perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. Or maybe just love's will. Perfect love's will for me is, well, I don't know. Perfect love's will for me, or
Let's bang in perfect. Perfect love's will for me is perfect. Repetition of perfect.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Enough.
Should we keep it like that?
Yeah, why not?
All right. Okay. So if you want to, today we'll continue with the theme of happiness.
This is a key idea in understanding what awareness means, awakening means.
Awakening, yeah. What awakening means.
You still believe it asks for suffering as penance for your, in quotes, sins. Is that limited awareness?
What's limited awareness?
Sins.
Not sure we got a translation for sin.
I'm happy
error.
to leave sins. I mean, it, you know, especially as it's in double quotes, he's meaning, maybe he's a touch ironic.
For your sins. It's quite actually difficult to get a translation for sins, because sin is not an error. An error is a retranslation of sin. It's just a mistake, can be corrected. A sin is kind of, you've made an error and it's permanent and it's undoable and you're guilty for it. That's what sin means. How you put that into one word or phrase, I'm not quite sure. So I think we'll just leave it, unless anyone has any other ideas. I can't think of a word or even a couple of words that capture what sin means. Can you?
I think it's good to keep it as sin, because that's,
I think we'll leave it.
Yeah, that's what our ego mind thinks it is.
Yeah, and also if you've had traditional Christian religious upbringing, then you'll know exactly what sin means, because that's a big part of the teaching, isn't it? So yeah, we'll leave sin as it is. I haven't got a translation for that.
I just have it in my mind. My dad, who was a minister for a long time, used to say to the dog, "Go away and think about your sins."
He's even saying it to the dog. God.
I mean, it used to make us laugh, but I used to think, oh.
Yeah, well, he was joking, but still, it's kind of like go and think about your sins. I mean, no, actually, you don't want to think about your sins. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Because there is no sin. If you're thinking about your sins, you're in a delusion.
Yeah.
This is not so, as he says.
This is not so, yet you must think it's so while you believe that sin is real and that perfect love's extension can sin.
Yeah, okay. So nice. Any thoughts on that first paragraph? Quite a nice, simple one.
Just to say that happiness is integral to the understanding of awakening.
Yeah. Which is, he's reminding us again, he does these themes. So if you remember around lesson 60 odd, he had happiness for several days repeated. My function, my happiness, so on. And now he's returning to it 40 lessons later and saying, okay, well, let's just revisit this, because it's really important that you recognize that, your happiness is, if you're not happy, then you're believing in the idea of sin. And this is not true. And he's relating, being happy to the sinless state, to being innocent. This is not so. Okay, any comments or questions on that from anyone else? Happy to go to the next one. Okay, so number 2, let's just create some space around that. Sally, if you want to read that for us, kindly.
If sin is real, then punishment is just and cannot be escaped. Salvation thus cannot be purchased but through suffering. If sin is real, then happiness must be illusion, but they cannot both be true. The sinful warrant only death and pain, and it is this they ask for they know it waits for them, and it will seek them out and find them somewhere, sometime, in some form that evens the account they owe to God. They would escape him in their fear, and yet he will pursue, and they cannot escape.
Okay. Any well, let's do the translation and just unpack it sentence by sentence as we go.
If sin is real, then punishment is just and cannot be escaped.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Awakening thus cannot be purchased through suffering.
So the idea of this sin is it means that punishment must be real, because I've really done something bad, and that demands punishment by God. So we project our sin and guilt onto God, and we make a God in that image. The fearful, wrathful, vengeful God of the Old Testament is just a projection of the ego mind that's believing in sin and guilt that then demands punishment. Okay, so awakening.
Oh, yeah, we've done that one, haven't we? Awakening cannot be purchased through suffering. But
I'm going to change that to accept, I think. This but, when he does but, it's, I don't know, it's very old-fashioned, isn't it? But through suffering. Awakening thus cannot be purchased except through suffering.
Okay.
I think that reads better, don't you think?
Yeah. If sin is real, then happiness must be illusion, for they cannot both be true. The sinful.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you believe in guilt and sin and punishment, how can you be happy? They contradict each other.
Yeah. The sinful warrant. Do we change warrant?
Deserve, maybe?
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. Sinful deserve.
The sinful deserve only death and pain, and it is this they ask for they know. Do you want me to stop?
Yeah, no, does that
Yeah.
make sense? I mean,
Yeah.
sin demands death and punishment and pain. This is the root of pain and death in this world. It's the idea that we really have sinned, that's possible. We have denied love, and now we must pay the price for it. And this is a delusion. Jesus is simply saying this is totally delusional. It has nothing to do whatsoever with perfect love. This is your own mad invention, and you simply need to recognize that it's not true. But he's highlighting here how this thought system works. If sin is real, then you hear the consequences, laying it all out for us. So this is one of those. We have these hard lessons that we call them the stick lessons, and then you have the carrot lessons. The stick lessons are like, right, we're going to show you the ego, and it's like death and disaster and pain and suffering. So there's a bit of this, but then he never leaves you there. He always switches it and says, okay, but actually there is another way. But he's got to show you how really dark and unpleasant this thought system is in order for you to choose against it, hasn't he? Because if you think it's okay to carry on believing in it, then he can't help you. So he's teaching and saying, okay, well, this is what the ego is, and make your choice. Do you really want this? And when he lays it out like this, it's I mean, like, you'd have to be insane to choose this consciously. Okay, I'm going to continue with number 5.
For they know it waits for them, and it will seek them out and find them somewhere, sometime, in some form that evens the account they owe to, what is it, extension of pure formless love.
So we call God pure formless awareness or perfect love. So you see, if you translate it like that, God kind of lends itself to some kind of identity, some kind of vengeful, wrathful. But translated as pure formless awareness of perfect love, the idea of sin becomes ridiculous. It's like, how can you have sin in pure formless awareness of perfect love? It clearly doesn't exist there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be pure formless awareness, and it wouldn't be perfect love, would it? So the value of doing the translation is it is clearly so ridiculous. The idea of sin in pure formless awareness of perfect love is just crazy. And it obviously contradicts that presence, that pure formless awareness of perfect love completely. So it's not true. You know, either sin is true or pure formless awareness of love is true. These are your choices, but they can't both be true. Okay, number 6, 7.
They would escape it in their fear. And yet it will pursue and they cannot escape. Sounds like a movie, doesn't it? Find you wherever you are and kill you.
And it is. You know, this is the drama that we've invented for ourselves. We literally wanted to run away from God. And where did we run away to? We ran away to the physical universe. So if you look at this diagram, sent into hell, this is what we keep referencing to. This idea of separation that kicked it all off, led to the formation of individual self, and then the sin and the guilt come underneath that. Oh, I've really done this. This is so terrible. And now God himself, which we now project out of our minds, and we invent a false image of God, God himself is going to punish me for my sin. So I must run away because I'm going to be punished. So where do I run away to? Well, you literally have to go out of your mind to run away from what you think is in your mind, don't you? And this is why we ran out of our mind. We went out of our mind, literally, into the physical universe. And we projected what was inside, outside, created this seemingly external reality where our thought was now projected outside and seemed to be outside of us. And now we live in this physical, in this projection of our own minds, seemingly hidden away, far away from this God that's going to come and get us. So this was the ego's twisted logic for inventing the universe. It's a place to run away from God and hide and be safe. And of course, it's not true, because the guilt and the fear and the sin and the attack go with you. Those thoughts are what permeate this universe. So we see this everywhere. So it's not really a safe place at all. The ego is telling you it is, but it's actually a very dangerous place. This is where sin and guilt and fear and attack seem to have a reality and seem to be continuously trying to attack your very life. And eventually, of course, you're going to die. So it's not very safe at all. But the ego's told you it is and wants to keep you here, believing that this is safe. And this, perfect love, pure formless awareness, is not safe. This is very dangerous. This is how it is completely inverted the truth. When in truth, this is the only safe state of mind. This is the only safe place you'll ever find. And this is extremely dangerous. You identify with this, well, you can suffer, you can experience pain, loss, sickness, death. I mean, this is not a safe place to be, very clearly, if you look at what happens to human beings and other life forms on this planet. You know, everything suffers and everything dies. So why would we believe the ego that it's going to keep us safe when this is self-evidently what it's done. And what else could you expect from a thought system based on sin and guilt, but pain and death? This is what Yeshua is trying to say to us. So when it's laid out like this for us, the choice becomes completely obvious, doesn't it? I mean, are you going to choose this? You choose the ego. Well, you choose all of this red stuff. You choose to be a victim. You choose a fearful, wrathful, vengeful God. You choose guilt and sin. You choose to fear continuously. You choose accusation, blame, attack. You choose really a nightmare. This is compared with pure formless awareness. This is a nightmare. Why would you choose that if you know what it is? So this is the process. He's teaching us what it is very clearly, so we can make a clear-cut choice against it. And when we choose against it, then all that's left is God or love or oneness or pure formless awareness, because those are your two alternatives. It's either this reality or it's this one. There's only two to choose between, fortunately. So people talk about multi-dimensions, and well, all of these dimensions exist in this consciousness. Any sense of dimensions, levels, exists in the separated consciousness. Doesn't exist in here, because by definition there's no separation. So you can't have separate levels or dimensions or any of it. You can only have perfect oneness, in perfect oneness. So this is the nature of the pure non-dual teaching of the Course, that frees us. The only way you're ever going to get free of all of this is if you go into perfect oneness. There's no other way. Otherwise, you maintain this. If you believe in separation at all, then you've got to believe in all of this. So this Course will be believed entirely or not at all, he says at some point. Saying you're either going to believe in oneness entirely or not at all, because you're going to deny it, and then you've got to believe in separation as the truth. Okay, so any thoughts on that or questions? No? Shall we move on then to number? Are you happy with that, Sonny? Do you want to maybe what we try and do is just give a little summary of each paragraph in your own words, just the essence of what it's saying.
Because we believe in guilt and sin, we run away from God, run away from the pure love, out of our mind into the illusion, which is evil.
And in that we suffer guilt and sin and pain and fear, and we believe that ultimately there's no hope. So they would escape it in their fear, and yet it will pursue, and they cannot escape. So it's actually not going to work, because the fear and the guilt and the sin haunt us in our apparently imagined state where we've escaped this and gone out of our minds into a body. They remain in our mind. So there actually was no escape. The ego strategy just didn't work at all. We didn't escape any of that. In fact, it's more present, because we see it everywhere in the world. So now the external world triggers all of these thoughts all the time. And so this isn't safe at all, and it really was not a good idea to do this. That's what Yeshua was saying. It was not a good idea to leave pure formless awareness and go out of your mind and come into this illusory reality at all. Okay, happy with number 2?
Yep.
Moving swiftly on, number 3.
If sin is real, salvation must be pain. Pain is the cost of sin, and suffering can never be escaped if sin is real. Salvation must be feared, for it will kill, but slowly, taking everything away before it grants the welcome boon of death to victims who are little more than bones, before salvation is appeased. Its wrath is boundless, merciless, but wholly just.
Okay, so as I said, this is he's dishing it up, isn't he? Okay, we got a stick lesson here. So do you want to do is there anything to try? There's a little bit to translate. So.
There's just salvation, yeah. If sin is real, awakening must be pain. So if we're believing in sin, we imagine awakening is going to be a hard punishment.
Yeah, which is totally absurd. But we could change awakening maybe here to freedom. How about that? I mean, that's how twisted the ego is. Freedom must be pain. What do you think?
Yeah.
We keep awakening. I quite like that.
Okay.
The ego is actually telling you your freedom lies in pain. That's the bizarre thing. Salvation must be feared. It will kill, but slowly, taking everything away before it grants the welcome boon of death. Wow, he's laying it on thick there. Death to victims are little more than bones before salvation is appeased. Its wrath is boundless, merciless, but wholly just. Salvation, yeah. Shall we change it to awakening must be feared? Or freedom must be feared? Awakening is appeased. Its wrath is boundless, merciless, but wholly just. Okay, happy with that?
Yeah.
We keep it as awakening in those two. Awakening must be, I think, leave freedom there. That sort of makes sense in that context. Awakening here, I'm not sure about this here, but I'm not sure when bones before awakening is appeased. I'm not sure if there's a better word. Or freedom is appeased, its wrath is boundless.
No.
I suppose it's saying to us awakening, it's ridiculous. Awakening, how can you possibly perceive that awakening is going to be fearful? But this is the ego's complete insanity. Like, it's actually going to awaken you to love and peace and joy, and yet the ego's telling you that its wrath is boundless, merciless, but wholly just. For salvation is appeased. Maybe before the false.
You did.
How about that?
Sin is real.
I quite like that. I wasn't really happy with awakening. Does that work? Do you think?
I think it does. I think it's good language. It makes sense in terms of appeasing gods.
Yeah. False god of sin you made is appeased. It's wrath, because that's really what he's talking about.
Yeah.
This false god, this false idol that you've made, is appeased, taking everything away before it grants the welcome boon of death. So it's the god of death, false god of sin and death you made is appeased. Its wrath is boundless, merciless, but wholly just. I think that kind of works. Okay, so happy with that?
Yep.
Moving swiftly on to number 4.
Okay.
And it's Iona, I think, again.
Who would seek out such savage punishment who would not flee salvation and attempt in every way he can to drown the voice which offers it to him? Why would he try to listen and accept its offering? If sin is real, its offering is death and meted out in cruel form to match the vicious wishes in which every sin is born. If sin is real, salvation has become your bitter enemy, the curse of God upon you who have crucified his son. Okay, so
Yeah.
not really easing up.
No. he's laying it on thick. He says that, but then he says you need the practice periods today. That's the next one. So it's like,
Okay.
okay, well, here we're going to go into practice then.
All right.
All right. Who would seek out such savage punishments?
Who would not flee? Who would not flee awakening
Yeah, I think that works there.
and attempt in every way he can to drown the voice which offers it to him?
Yeah.
Why would he try to listen and accept its offering? If sin is real, its offering is death and meted out in cruel form to match the vicious wishes in which sin is born. Yeah. Okay, if sin is real, awakening has become your bitter enemy, and the curse of pure formless awareness upon you who have crucified its extension.
Yeah. The curse of
Perfect love.
or good. Stick this in there. The curse of curse of the false god of sin and death you made upon you who have crucified. How about that?
If sin is real, awakening has become your bitter enemy, the curse of the false god of sin and death you made upon you who have crucified its projection.
Make sense?
Yes?
I think that's quite nice.
Okay.
He's actually talking about here.
Yes, exactly.
God is the false God. It's not
No.
God with a capital. No,
No.
this is how we perceive God, but it's actually
It's the false god of sin and death.
yeah, and the extension is not, we don't extend, the sin projects.
Yeah.
Crucified its projection. I think that makes it more understandable, which is the only reason to do the translation.
So he's saying if I am so invested in ego, why would I seek out the savage punishment that inevitably was offered me should I awake? And why would I not attempt in every way to drown the voice? Why would I try to accept its offering?
Because you think this is the voice that's going to save you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you're scared of it, you're terrified of it. So
I'm terrified of it. Yeah.
So of course you're going to run away because you completely misperceive what is your salvation or awakening.
And the awakening has become my bitter enemy.
Yeah. We could change that to freedom, maybe. Who would not flee?
Well, I wondered about that. Flee freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Got a bit of alliteration going on there. Flee freedom and attempt in every way he can to drown the voice which offers it to him? Why would he try to listen and accept its offering?
Yeah.
No. Okay, happy with that paragraph?
Yes.
Moving swiftly on. Fortunately, gives us some respite here. You need the practice periods today. After that, Jay, yeah, we really do. I need some light relief. Is it a Sally, I think?
You need the practice periods today. The exercises teach sin is not real, and all that you believe must come from sin will never happen, for it has no cause. Accept atonement or at-one-ment with an open mind which cherishes no lingering belief that you have made a devil of God's son. There is no sin. We practice with this thought as often as we can today because it is the basis for today's idea.
Okay. So we want to do a little translation there.
You need the practice periods today. The exercises teach sin is not real, and all that you believe must come from sin will never happen, for it has no cause. Accept atonement with an open mind. Cherishes no lingering belief that you have made a devil of, what is it? Pure formless love.
when it's hyphenated, like when it's possessive like this, we just generally use perfect love. So the full translation is pure formless awareness of perfect love, but that sounds clumsy. If it's of pure formless awareness of perfect love's extension, is too many ofs, so we'll just go with perfect. Perfect love's extension. Devil. Do you want to change devil? Doesn't use that word very often. You made a devil. You've made a
Enemy.
You've made, what he says, you've made it evil. Devil, evil, it's the same root word. You've made how about that? You've made perfect love's extension evil.
Yeah.
As opposed to a devil of God's son. I think that's more direct. It's to like what you've actually done. Happy with that? Translation?
Yeah. There is no sin. We practice with this thought as often as we can today because it is the basis for today's idea.
Okay, so we'll give a little summary of that paragraph.
Just keep practicing every hour. And I did it today, actually, strangely enough.
You?
Yeah.
Every hour, wow.
Yeah,
Well done.
huge difference. Huge difference. Yeah.
No.
Mm.
Every hour is good going. So
I can understand now that it's the ego that stops you doing it, isn't it? That it's easy to go, oh, well, I'm busy, and oh, I forgot to do it again. Oh, I forgot to do it again. And
yeah.
clearing.
Because it's an ongoing, it's an undoing. And when you say there is no sin, you're saying that the ego doesn't exist. There is no sin means there never was a thought of separation. It never really happened. None of its consequences are true or real. So it's a complete undoing for this belief. And it's got huge resistance to that. And he's saying, well, the only way you're going to believe this If you keep practicing it, if you keep saying sin isn't real, sooner or later you're going to start believing that, going, oh, actually, I'm getting it. It's simply not. It's not true. It's not real. And in this lies my awakening, my freedom, because none of it ever happened. I'm completely free of all the consequences of what never happened. This is the whole teaching. This is what he's trying to teach us to do in every situation. It seems to be happening, but the Holy Spirit's saying it never really happened because none of this is true. None of this is real.
It is quite interesting when you practice it every hour, because I've never done it every hour before. And it's like adjusting your GPS system every hour, isn't it? And so your course for the day is different. You make different choices, you have different feelings. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So the daily practice, when he's saying do it every hour, sometimes several times an hour, he's saying this is going to change your state moment by moment in the day, and you're going to interrupt the pattern of the ego. And so this is the fast track. You keep doing this day by day, you're going to awaken very quickly, because you're not going to have long periods where the ego is in charge. You're going to keep interrupting it every hour and reminding yourself, no, I'm not an ego. Actually, I'm the Christ. I'm the true self. And I change my thinking, change my thoughts, change my emotions, whatever's going on. So ego creeps in, you do the practice, you change it, you let it go. If you keep doing that, the ego's got no chance. If you actually really do his course properly, the 1 year, and I don't think anyone ever has, absolutely, according to no one ever has, because it's a really high standard. He's asking you to do it every hour and stuff. But if you can really apply yourself to doing it as well as you possibly can, the spiritual progress you'll make is enormous. So it's just because it's an ongoing repetition of these ideas every day, every hour, and that's how you learn. It's constant repetition. So he understands how learning works, and he's designed his course accordingly to learning principles. The frequent repetition is gonna be what helps you to learn this much more quickly than if you just do like once a week practice and then forget about it. That's why it's a daily thing. Okay, happy with that paragraph, number 5?
Yep.
All right, number 6 then.
God's will for you is perfect happiness, because there is no sin, and suffering is causeless. Joy is just, and pain is but the sign you have misunderstood yourself. Fear not the will of God, but turn to it in confidence that it will set you free from all the consequences sin has wrought in feverish imagination. Say, God's will for me is perfect happiness. There is no sin, it has no consequence. So should you start your practice periods, and then attempt again to find the joy these thoughts will introduce into your mind.
Okay. Let's do the translation. So that's, shall we go with perfect love?
Yeah, perfect love's will for you is perfect happiness, because there is no sin and suffering is causeless.
Will, I think we'll keep it as will. We translate it as awareness, but I'm not sure that doesn't quite work, does it?
No.
Let's see, read that. Perfect love's awareness for you is perfect happiness. Kind of works, sort of. What do you think? Will for you, awareness for you?
I would rather keep will.
Because it's a bit stronger. It's like a sort of an intention behind there.
Yeah.
Although God technically doesn't have intentions,
But God is our right mind, isn't it? And our mind has intentions.
Perfect love's will for you. Okay, we'll keep it as that. perfect happiness because there is no sin. And suffering is causeless. So if there's no sin, if you understand the logic, if there's no sin, then suffering must also be causeless. Because sin is what causes suffering.
Yeah.
So it completely undercuts the ego's entire thought system of cause and effect. Well, okay, if there was never a sin, then how can you have suffering? There's no suffering in pure formless awareness. Okay, we'll continue. Number 2, joy is just.
Joy is just, and pain is but the sign you have misunderstood yourself. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Fear not the will of pure formless awareness.
Or we could just translate it as fear not.
Perfect love.
The pure formless awareness of perfect love. Why would you fear that? When it's stated like this, you go, yeah, well, it's just absolutely pure formless awareness, beautiful, lovely, peaceful. Why would I fear that?
But turn to confidence that it will set you free from all the consequences sin has wrought in feverish imagination. Say, God's will for me is perfect happiness.
So perfect love.
Perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. There is no sin. It has no consequence. So should you start your practice periods and then attempt again to find the joy these thoughts will introduce into your mind.
Yeah, so it's really using affirmations here. Isn't it? This is affirmation, like as a technique. You're probably all familiar with it, but you're just stating a truth and you're saying it over and over and over again through the day in these practice periods. Perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. It's an affirmation. There is no sin and it has no consequence. Again, affirmation. So the more you say it, the more you'll start to believe it. And if you really do start to believe it, then joy, what he's saying is joy is your natural state that will arise. Because you're like, wow, I'm actually free. As soon as you feel that freedom, the lifting of the veil of the ego, oh, I'm actually not bound by all of these weighty consequences that it's invented in this world.
Yeah.
I'm still completely free. I'm in pure formless awareness of perfect love. Joy is a natural. Wow, that just feels so liberating. None of the stuff's real. I can just let it all go and just stay in this happy, joyful state forever, for all eternity. It's very, very delicious. That's what I can say. It's like, yes, I want that. Bring it on. And there's nothing in this world that can compare to that, because it's just such a beautiful state of mind. Nothing in form can touch that experience. Okay, so any thoughts on number 6 here?
No, it's lovely.
Oh, pretty simple stuff. You're just saying, joy is your true inheritance. Fear and sin are not there, and just repeat it and accept it. So that you start to experience this joy for yourself. So that's what it comes down to. It's the experience of it. The words, the mind training, and all the stuff we do are just the means to allow that experience to unfold. So the course is a means, not an end. Remember that. Ultimately, you don't need it. You don't need to study lessons and stuff when you're in perfect joy. Ultimately, but there's a path to get there. The work is to do this mind training and this correction, so that you can get there and you can stay there pretty much all the time. Okay, and then just number 7, and then we'll go into some meditation on it.
Give these 5 minutes gladly to remove the heavy load you lay upon yourself with the insane belief that sin is real. Today, escape from madness. You are set on freedom's road, and now today's idea brings wings to feed you on, and remember to go still faster to the waiting goal of peace. There is no sin. Remember this today and tell yourself as often as you can, God's will for me is perfect happiness. This is the truth because there is no sin.
Okay, and just one translation to do there, as far as I can see.
Perfect love's will.
Yeah. Let's just copy it from here. And then I'll just bold it. So in translations, if it's already italicized, I'll put it in bold so that you can see that that's been changed. Perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. I just switched it around. Okay, never mind. I'll just. So, any thoughts on that last paragraph?
Well, it is a heavy load that we lay upon ourselves in our insanity.
And he's making the direct connection here between sin and unhappiness. So the only way you're going to have happiness is if you believe there's no sin. So two completely contradict each other.
Yeah.
So just affirm that. Say it often to yourself. Remind yourself, God's will, love's will for me is perfect happiness. And this is the truth because there is no sin.
Yeah.
Because there is no cause. This sin, this idea of sin is false. It's all false. So whatever cause you get from a false idea must also be false. So then entire underpinning of the ego's thought system, the idea of separation underpinned by individuality, specialness, and then guilt and sin, it has no cause because the idea of separation is not true. There's no real cause here. And so if there's no real cause, then the effects cannot be real either. No cause, no effect. This is nothing. There's nothing really going on here. There's nothing. And so this is how you let it go. You recognize the nothingness of it. And just drop it all. And turn your mind to pure formless awareness. Okay, someone like to give a little summary of the whole lesson, just in a minute or two, and then we'll go into a meditation. What's the key? What's the key point? Okay, well, it's in the idea really, but then there's another key point.
Well, certainly, what's key is there is no sin, and happiness is my natural inheritance.
And that they contradict each other. If you believe in sin, he paints a pretty dreadful picture of this thought system, what sin leads to. So he's giving you the consequences, saying it's pain and it's death and it's sickness and it's really fearful and yet none of it is real. So you simply have to recognize the unreality of it, and then you'll be free. So simple, really. Just once you understand the metaphysics, such a simple idea. Okay, well, just let go of what's not real. But it takes a master like Yeshua to point it out to us. Say, okay, well, this is actually what's going on. Otherwise, we believe in it.
Yeah.
We're not actually aware of what we're doing. We have no idea what. Once you've gone out of your mind and your ego's thought system, you actually have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea who you are, where you are, why you're here, nothing. You're clueless.
Yeah.
which is what he's trying to remind us of. So look, I know you think you know what's going on, but trust me, you don't really. You're actually just very lost and confused. And the first step in awakening is realizing that, yes, I actually don't know what I'm doing. And I'm not able to manage this just with my own ego, myself. I have to ask for help of a higher power to get out of this mad place I've invented. Okay. Any other comments, questions on the lesson?
I've just had a little aha.
Okay.
A lot of people are scared of death because they don't like the suffering at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's no death if you think of like that, but also that suffering is such an illusion. That's a nice thought, that there's no suffering before death.
Mm. Yeah. And death is the release from suffering and pain. If you know death is the doorway, the portal to heaven, why would you fear it? Bring it on. Let me go through the door. I'm more than happy to leave behind the body and everything that goes along with it, the entire thought system of the ego. So then you go, well, why don't we all just commit suicide now? Because you're not ready, because your mind is still needs correction and healing. That's why. So we use our task while we seem to be here is to use our experiences in this world to correct our minds and prepare ourselves. So when we do finally die, and the body is no more, that our minds are healed, and there's no need to come back and have another trip in the illusion. The mind is freed, and we can just merge back into the pure formless awareness of perfect love that we are, and remain there forever, for all eternity. So we use our time here constructively to undo the ego, because this is only you don't undo the ego in heaven. In heaven, there's no ego. There's nothing to be undone. It's perfect. This is the place we come when you've got ego, the idea of separation, and you believe in it, and then you've got to undo it. So this is the only, as he says, forgiveness is your only function here. Forgiveness or letting go is your only function, because you want to awaken to this pure formless awareness, and you have to do it through the illusion. You've put yourself into it. You've got this whole ego thought system going. The only way you're going to wake up from that is while you're in the dream. It's not going to work if you suddenly exit the body and you've got all of this dysfunction there. Well, guess what? These beliefs are going to pull you back, and you need to come back into the world in order to really do the work, to see the ego and undo it. You need the world as the trigger for the ego. So that from a spiritual perspective, that's why we come here. It's so that, yes, the ego can reveal itself in our experience, and we can then let it go. Okay. Any other insights, Sally, or anything else to share?
No, just I realised I obviously had a belief that, fear that I could suffer before death, but it was all just tied in with old belief systems. So check that out afterwards.
Yeah, you really don't. You don't need to. There's people who just, some of the Buddhist monks who do Vipassana and stuff, they actually die in meditation. That's how they do it. They're like, okay, it's my time. I'm going to go into meditation, and I'm going to go in the meditation. Like, what a way to go. No suffering, just a laying of the body aside, and a blissful surrender into the pure formless awareness that you truly are. And anyone, you hear people like Anita Mojani and other people who've had near-death experiences speak, and they'll tell you it's totally blissful. It's just amazing. Why is everyone fearing this? It's just so peaceful and so beautiful. There's really nothing to fear at all. So fear is just the illusion. Actually, Kenneth's had a near-death experience. Is he around?
Yeah,
You're just having a little lie down on the sofa there.
I was, yeah, because yeah, I was thinking
Kenneth, do you want to share just for a minute or two about your near-death experience?
It's a long.
it's just a minute then that it wasn't scary.
Yeah.
Well, said it's
No, not scary. It was like disappear. The wonderful feeling disappeared. And then I was myself with my issues and everything I saw I have done. And what you call, you lift the carpet.
what? Yeah, you the number of times that you had pushed things under the carpet, not
Yeah.
wanted to look at your stuff.
Yeah, so they come very true in the big panel division. It's so very clear. And I start to cry because I feel it was very tough. And I saw my daughter, she still lived, but I saw her, how she had missed me when I not come and get her when she was 3-4 years old. And that came back. So that was very heavy.
Yeah.
Very good to see. So we have a wonderful connection today. Very strange.
Yeah. So it was like a review of your life.
Yeah. And there was no Jesus or God people talk about for me. There was more myself to stand up for what I have done and what I see and say, I'm so sorry. I said it many times. I'm sorry. But that's sorry. The last I said was so deep. And I could feel the thank you. I could relax. So relaxed. And then somebody feels like a kick in the back and I go back.
Yeah, he came back. Yeah.
So I was 10 minutes away from the operation.
Right.
Me, it feels like hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was overall a very peaceful experience. You were like, yeah, this is very
peaceful. Very peaceful. And no scaredness. I was not scared.
Yeah.
I was scared before.
Yeah.
Shall operate. But I said when I don't smoke at that time, but I said, give me a cigarette because I'm going to die. Because I was scared. And I did that and I won because it was terrible. And
You
then,
vomited.
yeah, and then I started to cry and the nurse come and said, take it easy. We have things for that. Oh, don't worry. And I worked like 7 years old and hold her hand and go up. And then I shower and did some liver, what do you call pen mark.
They marked you out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was funny when this big guy who was anesthetic doctor in Swedish we say, are you ready? Means är du beredd? And beredd is very close to jag är rädd. I am scared in Swedish. So I say I am scared, but he said good. He put this
Okay.
yeah, and I disappear.
Misinterpretation.
Yeah. So everything was a mistake, but I go away. Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And that experience changed your life, didn't it? Because you were like,
totally.
but I got a different perspective now on my life, having come back.
I cannot lie anymore. I feel why? What reason to that? So much I have dropped. Many people and everything. So just my way. And feel I do right. Funny, they answer me, some force answer me like very good, like lovely. So I'm following them. And my hair go up when I do
and no sort of judgment. You didn't feel like judgment. It was just like you facing your own stuff and saying, okay, well, I've made mistakes, but no one's condemning me. That's really the thing.
Like a nice film.
It's only my own self-condemnation that's the problem.
Yeah.
I can just let this go and relax, and
Yes.
it's all okay, because pure formless awareness is actually not aware of any of it. That's the beauty of it.
And one thing more, I'm very interested of what's happened after before I was there. So I touch myself like this, and I feel I had a body.
Hmm.
So we have a body on the other side. So
Okay, interesting.
that brings more question, but I don't have them.
Well, it's a projection of the mind. What is it? If you remember Morpheus in the Matrix, says, Neo says, "What is this?" He says that it's the digital projection, the mental projection of your digital self. I think he framed it, something like that. So it's a projection of the mind. That's what's going on there.
Yeah.
So you still have the self-image in your mind. So you still think you have the body, but it's all in the mind, which shows you that it's all in the mind. You're feeling it, but there's nothing there. Well, how do we know that there's nothing there now? You think you can feel your body and you're in it, but actually it's just an experience, isn't it? You think you have it, you feel it, taste it, touch it, eat it, bathe it, do all this kind of stuff with it, and yet maybe it's not there. It's a total delusion. You think quite extraordinary, really. But this is what the teaching is saying. No, it's actually not really there. In fact, the whole world's not really there. You're not really out of your mind. None of this really exists.
Yeah.
You're actually still, your mind is still in pure formless awareness. That's where you are. That's your true home. That's true reality. And all of everything else that you think is going on is actually not going on. It's false. It's not true.
Yeah.
So that's the undoing of the entire ego's dream of separation and all its consequences.
Can I ask, after the near-death experience, did people notice you were different afterwards?
Yeah, I had another face, another express from the eyes was more clear, and I listened more, take it easy. I was more aware and listen, and before, like,
Yeah, you're quieter. And is that when your sort of spiritual awakening started?
Yeah, I feel something very much immediately, directly come after that.
Mm.
And it was
And is that when your healing journey started? You started doing healing work after that?
Yeah, I had tried do it before, but something in me, when I say love, don't say that I feel it.
Yeah.
Like here.
It was more experiential after that.
Then everything works. Before I think I work more, and that was my will. It's no meaning with my will. Come from the start. Yeah. Different, two different things. Yeah.
So dying was the best thing that ever happened to you.
Yeah, I'm saying I have saved many other people.
Anita, have you heard of Sally? Have you heard of Anita Mojani?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's got a great book called "Dying to Be Me." I don't know if you've read it, but this idea, she had to die in order to come into her true self and wake up to who she was, because before she was just living an illusion. It was very painful, and the dying, in hindsight, so the cancer and the death was the best thing that could have happened to her, because that was the awakening from that very limited, unhappy self that she constructed into amazing woman, author, best-selling speaker, quite extraordinary, the transformation from how she described herself previously, very limited, to that, to what she is today. Extraordinary shift, more facilitated by the near-death experience. So there's really nothing to fear. It's like, okay, well, if you died tomorrow, it's like, okay, well, cool, I'm out of here, great. But while you're here, your job is, okay, well, I've got work to do. I need to correct my mind and heal my mind fully so that it's done. I don't need to come back. Reincarnation is just the stubborn belief that you're right. That's the truth. I'm right. I am human. I am separate. Sin is real. I'm right. So yeah, well, guess what? Back you come. Whereas, awakening, somebody say, okay, well, I've been wrong. My whole life I've been wrong. In fact, every lifetime I've been wrong. I've never been right. The moment I had the idea of separation, I went wrong. And it's been wrong since then. But fortunately, I can realize that now and I can correct it and say, okay, well, I can start to choose right and think right-minded thoughts and correct this whole delusion. There is awakening. The Holy Spirit will ultimately free me from the entire dream. And that's the promise of this. To go back here where everything's perfect, there is no pain, suffering, death, and you're there eternally. It's mine. I mean, the ego can't wrap its head around that, can it? So you can only sort of start to intuit it experientially and feel into it. They use the word feel. You can only feel it. This is not like how can you define what's indefinable? See, this is the problem. You can't define what's infinite and eternal. There's nothing to wrap your head around. It's just an experience. That's why I said universal theology is impossible, but universal experience is not only possible but necessary. That's where this is leading, this whole practice, into the experience of this. So that's why it calls it knowledge. You know that this is true. There's no doubt anymore in your mind.
No, exactly. Yeah. No doubt.
And from that knowing, you take that into your dream world, and you come across very differently. A person who has true knowledge of who they are is an awakened or enlightened person in this world, and there's something different about them, no doubt. They have a presence and an energy that's different. It's not of this world. So this is what we're all becoming. Okay, so shall we do a meditation on this?
Yeah.
Everyone got time for a 20-minute med?
I'll go now, but thank you very much. It's been very enlightening.
Okay, Sally.
I'll listen to
Yeah.
the presentation on the recording.
All right. See you tomorrow, and I'll send you a message about what we discussed with the membership and stuff.
Okay.
Actually, very simple.
Yeah.
All right. See you tomorrow. You're going to join tomorrow afternoon? Okay, she's gone. Sue and Iona and Kenneth, you happy to do a 20-minute med?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Nice.
Nice.
Just put yourself on mute. Yeah, right. Okay, how did that happen? Quite sure how that happened. Video's just gone off, so start my video again and start the recording. Okay, so just making yourself comfortable, sitting feet shoulder width apart, back straight, cup your hands in your lap, close your eyes, and start off by taking a nice deep breath in through the nose. Noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises, and a subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. And you clench your sphincter muscle, you lock the energy in, bring the energy up the spine, into your heart center. Put one hand on your heart, connecting with your heart space. Feel this warm wave of energy rising up, spine into the crown of your head. Pause at the top of the inhale. And so just check in, scan your mind. Notice any thoughts, emotions, and body sensations related to these going on for you. Just kind of breathe into that. So breathe in, create some space, some light, some awareness. Bring that into any of these dark thoughts and emotions. Breathe it into any areas of tension in your body. So you notice and just remind yourself of today's lesson. Part of the dissipation of this. Just remind yourself that God's will, or love's will, perfect love's will for me, is perfect happiness. There is no sin. It has no consequence. So none of the negative thoughts and feelings are real. Sin isn't real then, and it has no consequence, and none of that is true or real. So you can let go of it. So choose to do that now. Just exhale. The breath help you just to release it to the nothingness that it really is. Just letting it all go. Surrendering it all. Pull the lower stomach into the spine. Expel the last remaining air out. And just rest in the peace and the stillness. Lie beyond the ego. Your formless awareness calls you into this sinless state. Sinless means innocent, means no sin, no wrongdoing. You never did anything wrong. You never can sin against pure formless awareness. It is still pure and formless and perfectly aware. And this awareness will bring you happiness. So just sink into that happy state. And pure formless awareness of perfect love. Let it arise in your mind and your heart. Sink into it deeply. Connecting the deeper part of your mind. Where there is no sin. Just remind yourself, perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. There is no sin. It has no consequence. And let yourself just drop into deeper awareness. Remind yourself there's really nowhere else to go. There's nothing else to do, nothing else to think about. Just surrender to this state of pure formless awareness. The next couple of minutes of deep silence. So many thoughts arise in your mind, just observe them, particularly anything that feels negative, limiting, contracted, constricting in any way. And remind yourself that perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. Perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. There is no sin, it has no consequence, so I can let go of all of this. This is the truth. Perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. This is the truth because there is no sin. Just accept that. Exhale, just releasing any remaining dark clouds of sin in your mind. Any thought of errors, mistakes you've made that seemingly are permanent, you cannot undo. This is what sin is. So let it all go. Remind yourself, perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. This is the truth because there is no sin. So all its consequences are gone, and then just surrender to the experience of it. Pure formless awareness of perfect love. Just let it arise in your mind, come over you, envelop you. Surrender to it completely. Experience the perfect happiness this lesson talks about for the next couple of minutes of deep silence. So just very gently coming back. This deep connected state into an awareness of the body and the breath and the senses, and via these to the world that seems to be outside of you. And on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes. So 1, just breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises and the subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. Pausing at the top of the inhale, check in with your mind, scan your mind, noticing what's going on in your mind, thoughts, emotions, sensations. Observe all of that. And just be willing to let it go if it's not serving you, feels at all limited, contracted, constricting. Just remind yourself that perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. This is the truth because there is no sin. So there's no consequence of sin. This thought and emotion cannot be real. Exhales. Imagine you blowing it away with the breeze of your breath. And the nothingness that it really is. Dark cloud leaving you to reveal the pure blue sky of your pure formless awareness. The light of your source shining through it. So exhale. Notice the chest and the stomach suck back in. The energy subsides back down. Front channel of your body coming to rest in your lower stomach and your groin. On the count of 2, feel the weight of your body pressing down into the chair or the sofa, your feet touching the ground. Noticing what you're feeling and touching. Breathing in, maybe there's a subtle smell in your nose. Taste in your mouth. Notice what you're hearing. The surrounding environment. Just noticing all these things from this very still, calm and surrendered state. Anchor this state into your awareness so you can stay rooted in this higher awareness, pure formless awareness. Set the intention to do that for the rest of the afternoon and evening until our next session. So it is said, so it is done. And on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes. Just take a minute to look around. Your eyes rest randomly on an object. Look at it for a few seconds without naming it in your mind, judging it, labeling it, interpreting it in any way. Move on, look at the next one. And the next one. And notice that your underlying awareness is exactly the same. There is no change. There's no shift. It's the same awareness. So you start to learn that this awareness is the truth, and all of your perceptions and your thoughts and emotions are not ultimately true. They are just clouds and obscure this true awareness, which is where your peace and your happiness lie. Remind yourself one more time, perfect love's will for me is perfect happiness. This is the truth because there is no sin. Carry this happy, sinless state with you for the rest of the afternoon, evening until our evening session. And if you need to top yourself up, you can do that using any of the recordings. I'll send you a 3-minute recording, a 7-minute recording, just to guide you through practicing this lesson frequently. So use that and join us tonight. We'll do another meditation based on this lesson, and also the text. Read and discuss today's text reading, section 6 of chapter 13, which I think is a 13-paragraph one, so it's quite long. So we'll get straight into it tonight. We'll do a meditation and get straight into it. So that brings us to the end of this session. Thank you, Sue and Iona, for joining, and I hope to see you a little bit later. Are you going to be able to join later?
I'll join